Greg Palast, the investigative journalist and author of How Trump Stole 2020, or at least tried to. GregPalast.com is his website. His Twitter handle is Greg_Palast. Greg, are you back from Georgia? Or are you still down there?
I just arrived back from Georgia. I'm taking a Christmas break, a Hanukkah break, whatever, and trying to stay a little bit safer. But my God, it was skullduggery, fun and games, madness. You have no idea. Well, actually, I'll tell you what the idea is if you want to hear the craziness that went on.
Please do so.
Okay, so when we last left our last discussion, Black Voters Matter, the Hispanic rights group, Southwest Voter Registration Education Project, Operation Push, all these big voting rights organizations sued the state of Georgia because I had discovered, if you remember, the removal of 198,000 voters illegally from the voter rolls of Georgia. They just said they moved, and they never did. They're right there. I'm talking to them. I'm filming them. They're saying, why can't I vote? I'm still in Georgia. So these major organizations and these top voting rights lawyers led by the National Bar Association, C.K. Hoffler, Fred Gray, who was Rosa Parks' lawyer back in 1954.
Like
he turned 90 at the trial. So here's what happened.
Right.
The judge gave us a trial, but he said you didn't, on a technicality, we didn't give enough notice to the state to get an injunction to get people back on before the election. So the lawyer said, well, okay, so let's give them notice. So we filed a new suit with new notice, so that'll be two. And we notified the Secretary of State we're coming by to drop off the suit and give him notice, followed by the way, all the local TV cameras and CNN and everyone else. And so we went up into the Capitol, across from Brian Kemp's office, and to deliver the material to the Secretary of State with the cameras rolling. They locked the doors. They turned out the lights. They put on a little yellow taggy that with a cell phone number. We called that, and it just went to voicemail. So they were literally hid in the dark for 2 hours. So we said, okay, we have another route. Latasha Brown of Black Voters Matter said, let's go another way. So we went over to another state office building, and lo and behold, there, hiding behind a door, was the director of elections for the state of Georgia. And he came out, and we, slapped the suit on him. But even more, the judge had said, listen, you've got real problems with your you've clearly removed people who haven't moved. There's terrible discrepancies in your purge list. That's the term for removing voters. And you should meet with the experts and meet with Black Voters Matter and Greg Palast. So here we were. And they said, so when are you going to meet with us? The judge said, meet with us. And he was hemming and hawing, and then also, and the cameras are rolling, so he's trying to get out of there. And at the same time, so then I asked him something else. The state told the court that they had checked with the post office. You have to use a licensee. There's licensees who can get in the post office computers, and because who knows if you've moved? It's the post office. And they said that they used the post office, checked. We checked, and they didn't. They claimed that they hired some contractor named Anchor. We hired Anchor, that is Black Voters Matter and the Palast Investigative Fund. They said they never worked with the state of Georgia. They basically pulled a con on the court. And so I confronted them with it. I said, you actually, in effect, you perjured yourself to the court to get out of putting these voters back on the voter rolls. And don't forget, Tom, what's unusual about this case, here's about whether voters were wrongly removed from the voter rolls. And we know what color they are because we've met them, Mr. Diaz, Mr. Watson, Martin Luther King's cousin, these people who've never left Georgia. And, so they conned the court into with this material to try to avoid getting these people back on. And the Republican National Committee joined the case on behalf of the state. And it's like, why is the RNC here? Why is the top hitmen, including Trump's, by the way, personal lawyers who are defending him against potential criminal charges in New York, why are they in the case? Why are they trying to stop voters from voting in Georgia. I mean, if you want to win the election, isn't the Democratic small d the Democratic way is to convince the voters to vote for you as opposed to blocking them because you don't like their color?
That's how it's supposed to work.
Yeah, you thought that. Remember in the 6th grade, you were told, everyone gets to vote if you're a citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, welcome to Georgia. I mean, maybe in America, but not in Georgia. So we're still fighting it. And now we got this second lawsuit. So let's see what if they're going to continue to block these voters. We've gotten thousands back on. In fact, the judge noted that, and they said, "Oh, this creates confusion." But the fun and games, literally, I haven't had targets of my investigations do that in a long time. Literally, turn out the lights, lock themselves in, and hide in the dark. And you have to understand, this is in the state capitol, across from the governor's office.
Is this because, like, this whole thing about, you've got to serve people, you've got to physically hand the papers to them. Is that a legal requirement? Yes. I mean, did you actually have to physically say, here? Yes, we had to physically say, here are the papers, accept them. Now, you have to understand, we notified them, we called them, we issued a press release even, join us, so because the local, all the local and some national television wanted to get this and reporters. And they literally hid, but they forgot that we figured, that we found that we literally hunted them down. It was ridiculous. You have some of the top lawyers in the United States. You have Black Voters Matter, Latasha Brown. All these people are all, they're hiding. So then we run off to this other state office and we catch them. We get them on camera. In fact, that's one of the things that the courts, that our lawyers are very concerned with, that we actually have videotape of them accepting the suit. We got the director of elections. We said, one of our lawyers said, "Oh, I see a timestamp machine there. Would you timestamp this?" This is all on videotape, because these guys will deny we ever gave them the papers. So they're playing games. So what the issue is, what does this mean for those 190,000 Georgians who Kemp had thrown off the voting rolls before he became governor?
Yes.
If that is the genesis of this, what happens to those people now? Do they still have to? Will they be able to vote in the election?
Unfortunately, well, we think that we have about 20,000 back on, because we ran a heck of a campaign, including a giant electronic billboard featuring Rosario Dawson telling people, check your registration. So we had a big check your registration campaign so people would know if they were called. We had massive calling done by the Southwest Voter Registration Education Project, in English and Spanish. So we got tens of thousands of people back on. We don't know how many exactly, but I'm going to tell you, over 100,000 people are going to show up and not be able to vote. We already got a lot of these people try to vote in the general, and they don't know what the heck happened. They don't know why they were removed from the voter rolls. And a lot of people then filled out provisional ballots, because the federal law says if you show up and you can't vote, you must, by federal law, be given this provisional ballot. But by Georgia law, they can't count the ballot. So you get to pretend you voted. And unfortunately, a lot of people, I talked to one voter, the Waymer family, they were knocked off. They were given provisional ballots, and they thought that they had voted because they were given provisional ballots. But I said, unfortunately, no. And it's a tragedy, because then people also don't realize that they have to re-register. So I hope this.
It's amazing.
We'll see what the
Greg, stick around.
I
want to do a little deeper dive into this whole topic. We've got Greg Palast with us. He is the investigative journalist and author of his most recent book, How Trump Stole 2020. GregPalast.com, PALAST.com is his website. You can tweet him at Greg_Palast. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back in just a moment with Greg Palast. Stick around. And welcome back, Greg. It looks like, even though you so I understand what's going on, the court said you didn't give the Secretary of State enough notice. You gave them that notice over the last day or two.
Yeah.
That is
Maybe
not
yesterday.
that's not in time for those people to automatically be put back in the voter rolls for the January, it's the 5th, right, the election?
Well, we have, like I say, we have the best voting rights lawyers in the country, and they're going to try to get another injunction, see if we can get them back on. It's ridiculous. And again, the fun and it's absurd. You have the Secretary of State hiding in the dark, trying not to receive a legal paper while the cameras are rolling. It's nuts. It just shows to what lengths they will go. So we will try.
That was Rassenperger?
Rassenperger, that's really his name. And, but this is just one of the games. I mean, one of the things I should say is that I wish that were the only evil thing that they were doing, the only Jim Crow trick. I was down in Cobb County, which is normally Republican. They voted for Biden in Cobb County.
Oh, I used
Georgia.
to live there in Cobb County.
Yeah.
We were the ones who sent Newt Gingrich to Congress.
Yes. So Newt Gingrich's county went for Biden, and so they panicked. So there are 11 early voting stations in Cobb County. There were for the general election, and now they're panicked that all these Democrats and liberals, black folk, brown folk are coming in by the thousands to vote early, so they closed 6 of the 11 voting stations in Cobb County. All the voting stations that were closed were in African-American neighborhoods. I mean, this is not like 1955. So they literally closed the 6 early voting stations in Cobb County that were in the African-American neighborhoods. And then, of course, people moved to the other voting stations where you ended up with 3-hour lines. By the way, Tom, the turnout is way above the presidential election, which was a high turnout to be. That was a record turnout, and that record's being busted in the early voting right now. Every day, lines 3-4 hours long. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, people are not going to be dissuaded. They can move the polling stations to the Arctic, and the public is going to show up. I mean, people are going to vote.
Yeah, the question is, will their votes be counted?
Well, this is a big problem because, for example, 3 voters, one of the things that people are doing, I mean, one good sign is that people are not mailing in their ballots. I can't tell you how many people have contacted our, GregPalast.com to say, I mailed in my vote 10 days before the election, 12 days before the election, and they said it was late. So people are now going to drop boxes. But 2 of the 3 voters that I encountered putting votes in drop boxes forgot their return address on the envelope. They figure, well, I'm dropping it off. It's, I don't need a return address. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you do. They'll do anything to knock out your vote. It is ugly. And any little mistake on that mail-in drop-off ballot that people are putting in those boxes because they don't want to wait. Some people can't and don't want to wait 3 hours. In addition, we have the GOP. You ready for this? They're putting cameras above the drop boxes to try to identify people they say are illegally dropping off ballots because you can't drop off someone's ballot unless you live in their household. Wow. I mean, so they run a spy network to say, that's crazy. Not someone living in that household that dropped off the ballot. It's nuts.
That's crazy. Stick around. We'll be right back. We're talking with Greg Palast. We'll be right back. It's coming up on... On the Science Revolution this week is Melissa Troutman and Joshua Boaz Probanik on their new documentary with Mark Ruffalo, Invisible Hand. The rights of nature movement captured in Invisible Hand changes nature's status from property to a living entity, which fixes a fundamental flaw within societies worldwide that contributes to everything from genocide to ecocide. Across the globe, communities are creating new legal systems that grant legal, enforceable rights to nature, thereby honoring the rights of all people, too. This documentary shows when we enact and enforce the rights of nature, we restore the sanctity and equanimity of all life, including human beings. Tune into the Science Revolution wherever fine podcasts are found. Welcome back. Tom Hartman here with you. Greg Palast on the line with us. So, Greg, Louise and I used to live in Cobb County, and I had an opportunity every 2 years to vote against Newt Gingrich. And someday remind me to tell you the whole story about Newt coming to the public schools in a way that produced such a local uproar that one of my kids ended up homeschooling out of this. It's an amazing story. I mean, this is how politicized Newt had gotten our schools. And this was, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. It was just amazing. But in any case, did I hear you during the break we were talking, and did I understand you correctly to say that all of the early voting locations in Cobb County is about half black, that all of the voting locations in Cobb County in black neighborhoods were closed? And if so, was that Raffensperger who did that, the Secretary of State, or was it
No,
Brian Kemp, the governor?
So not only did the people vote for Joe Biden, but they threw out some of those county commissioners. So the lame duck Republican county commissioners closed those early voting stations. By the way, Tom, that is, the ACLU tells me that's completely against the law. Barbara Arnwine, the top voting rights expert in America, Professor Arnwine at Columbia University, she was there in Cobb, and and so there was pressure, so they reopened 2 of those. But that's just the beginning. We also had in Cobb County, in Georgia, you have this weird system that anyone can challenge anyone else's vote or registration. So we have that organization, this right-wing and frankly racist organization called True the Vote, that is literally challenging, are you ready for this? 300,000 voters on the Georgia voter rolls, overwhelmingly voters of color and young people. 300,000, because any voter can challenge another voter.
Yeah, True the Vote is the modern incarnation of... Right, it's the modern incarnation of Operation Eagle Eye, the thing that William Rehnquist helped start back in Arizona in the late 1950s, early 1960s, where they would go to polling places and challenge voters, because Arizona had a similar law, and he used that to challenge Hispanic and Native American voters for years. I mean, that's how William Rehnquist made his chops in the Republican Party and started clawing his way up to becoming, Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court. It was, his racist efforts to stop people of color from voting in Arizona. So, now we've got this national organization funded by racist right-wing billionaires. I mean, it's just mind-boggling, the whole thing.
Can you imagine? I mean, and as I said, they're even having cameras above the drop boxes so they can do face recognition and say, oh, that person doesn't live with the person whose ballot they dropped off. Are you kidding me?
Right.
And then you
What's
have to
next?
go through a challenge. Understand, if your registration is challenged, you can get pulled off the voter rolls, and then you have to go to a hearing. And, of course, when's the hearing going to be? Next year, after the vote's over?
After the election.
You're talking 1/3 voters facing a challenge right now by these right-wing crazies. Well, I don't know if they're crazies. Maybe they're very smart, because maybe that's the only way that they can keep Mitch McConnell from unemployment.
So does that mean that the 300,000 names that True the Vote has thrown out of Georgia voters, not thrown out, has put forward, has challenged, thank you, that those 300,000 people, when they show up to vote or when they mail in their vote, it will be set aside and not counted?
That's what they're counting on, or if they mail in their ballots, it'll be set aside and not counted, and then there'll have to be a whole fight over each of those ballots. It's madness. Now, understand, there's 159 counties in Georgia, and each one will make decisions about this. And what we're worried about is, especially in those rural counties where we have literally bus loads of lawyers running around to try to protect the voters. And they can't stop every challenge. They can't challenge every challenge. It's completely out of control, the Jim Crow operation, completely out of control.
Yeah, and large chunks of rural Georgia, having lived there for 13 years, large chunks of rural Georgia are black counties. I mean, there's white rural Georgia and there's black rural Georgia. And, they're also, by the way, because there's massive early voting, and as you know, African Americans tend to vote on Sundays after church souls to the polls, which is harder to do because of COVID. But the counties have stopped opening. Most counties, 120 of the counties, have not had weekend voting. That's against the law. They literally shut the polls because they know black people working during the week have to vote on weekends. Greg, they're Republicans. They don't care about the law. They'll deal with the law after the election. They only care about getting power. So if they can win the election, they can lose the lawsuits afterwards, but they still have that political position, don't they?
Well, that's what we're trying to convince the courts, that you have to act now. Otherwise, it's yeah. You know, it's devastating. But you know what? People are energized by the fact that they're trying to steal a vote is actually energizing people, because they realize if someone's stealing your vote, it must be worth something. I've never seen turnouts like this. Every day is like election day. It's stunning, and people will not leave the lines. I'm just worried about the harassment that's going on. And, of course, and add to this the overlayer of the white supremacists running around with their, swastika tattoos, intimidating voters.